I'm Judith Worthington. I work at the Transplantation Laboratory, and I'm going to try to explain to you today about what is a tissue type, what are antibodies, and how they might affect how long you might wait for a transplant. So a tissue type is like a barcode on a supermarket product, and each person has their own. It's like a unique identifier for each person. Nobody's barcodes are the same, and then your immune system acts as a way of scanning the barcode to check that all the cells in your body belong to you. So if your immune system as a scanner detects a cell that doesn't have your barcode on it, it will initiate the immune response to kill that cell. So tissue typing is the laboratory test that we do to determine what a person's barcode is. Now, once your immune system scans and detects foreign cells in your body, it will use its antibodies to kill these cells. So antibodies are found in your blood samples, and they bind to cells that are different from your own and alert the immune system to deal with them. So they're absolutely vital for fighting infection. They're really crucial that you have these and that they will fight your infection. But the downside of them is that they also recognise that a kidney transplant would be foreign to you and would attack that as well. So you get HLA-specific antibodies by your immune system seeing somebody else's HLA type. And that can only happen in three ways. It can happen through pregnancy. So when mum is pregnant, the dad part of baby is what your immune system will recognise. If you have a previous transplant, then it will also recognise that as being foreign, and you can produce antibodies. Or if you have blood transfusions, you may produce antibodies. And the more pregnancies, blood transfusions and transplants you have, the more likely you are to produce antibodies, and the more antibodies you're likely to produce. So one term that you might hear when you talk to your transplant surgeon or your transplant nephrologist is how many antibodies you've got or how high the level is. And sometimes they call it your PRA, or they might call it your calculated reaction frequency. I'm just going to use this slide to try and explain what that actually means. So the A1, 2, 3, etc. that are along the top of this table are different HLA types, because there are lots and lots of different HLA types. There's millions of HLA types. And if you produce antibodies, then you're not allowed to have a donor that has that HLA type. So in the top table, we've got somebody who's got no antibodies, so 0% antibodies, and they can have all of the tissue types that are listed in that top table. At the bottom here, we have an example of somebody who has 98% antibodies, and that basically means that they've produced antibodies to 98% of the different HLA types in the table. So you can't have donors from those. So you would only be able to have the donors that are in green. Now, the amount of antibodies that you have or you produce changes over time. So anytime we get a sample from you, that will just be a snapshot of what your antibody profile is. And whilst you might say, I've not had any pregnancies, transfusions or transplants since I last sent you a sample, you can start producing more antibodies just because you've had a cold or you've reacted to a virus. So it's important that we get regular samples from you while you're on the transplant waiting list. So things that are going to affect how long you might wait for a transplant. It's difficult because this isn't a traditional waiting list where you go on and you get to the top and you get a transplant. What we try to do is allocate the kidneys so that we're minimising the difference between your barcode and the barcode of the kidney, because then, with the help of the immunosuppressant drugs, you won't reject the kidney. So there are three things that will affect how long you might wait. The first one is your blood group. So this chart here shows the median wait time for people who are blood group AB, A, B and O. And you can see that the people who are blood group B will wait the longest in general, and the patients who are blood group AB will generally wait the shortest time. So blood group is a factor in how long you might wait for a transplant. The other factor is how many antibodies you've produced. So as we said before, this is often expressed as a percentage, the calculated reaction frequency. So if you have 0 to 84% antibodies, the median wait time is about 2.5 years. If you're unfortunate and you've produced a lot of antibodies because you've had a lot of pregnancies, transfusions or previous transplants, and you have 100% antibodies, then the median wait time is 6.5 years. So that's another big factor in how long you might wait for a transplant. And the last one is, as I said, everybody has their own unique barcode, their own tissue type, and there are millions of different tissue types in the world. And some are more common than others in the same way that some blood groups are more common than others. So here, just to show, HLA-A2 is a very common HLA type and found in almost 50% of the population, whereas some of these down at the bottom, A36 and A80, are very rare and not seen very often. So if you've got a rare tissue type, it might be difficult to find someone with a similar barcode to yourself, and you may wait longer for a kidney transplant. Now, you'll have heard a lot about what happens to you on the day of transplant, and just to say that sometimes we have to do some more tests just before you can go to theatre, just to check that this kidney would be suitable for you. So one of these tests we do is just a screening test. That it takes about 2 hours to complete. So you may get admitted to the ward, we may need to get samples from you, and we may need to do a quick test just to make sure that the organ's suitable for you. And sometimes we have to do a longer test called a cross-match test. And this is like doing a transplant in a test tube, because we'll take cells from the donor that have the donor's HLA type on them, and we'll take your sera and we'll check that you haven't got any antibodies that would kill the kidney. So it's almost like doing a transplant in a test tube, and just to see if it will work. Now this is a longer test, it takes about 4 hours to complete. So it's just so that you know that sometimes there may be more tests that we need to do just to confirm that the kidney is suitable for you. So what can you do to help us? As I said, any time we test your antibodies, it's just a snapshot in time. So it's important that we get regular samples from you so we can keep your antibody profile up to date. It's important to know if you've had any blood transfusions since you last sent us any samples, so please let your clinical team know so that they can pass the information on to us. And also, if you're going to go on holiday, please you let the team know so that we can suspend you from the transplant waiting list. And just to reassure you, even if you're suspended from the transplant list to go on holiday, you still continue to accrue wait time points, so that won't impact on whether you will be offered a kidney in the future or not.